Hey everybody, welcome to the 16th edition of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast presented by the Sportster.com. So glad to have you, man. We got a lot to talk about today. We did an interview with Roman Reigns a couple weeks ago promoting the Hobbs and Shaw movie. We're finally able to talk about it. It's going to be awesome. He said so many cool things we want to share with you. We watched Raw and SmackDown this week, and they were fantastic, run by Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff. We got to cover that as well. We'll talk about Fyter Fest and the chair shot to Cody Rhodes. We'll talk about Extreme Rules a little bit. A couple other things like Seth Rollins' apology. There's a lot to cover. That's this episode of the Smart Marks of Wrestling podcast presented by the Sportster.com. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 16 of the Smart Marks Wrestling podcast presented by the Sportster.com. My name is Jim Parsons. As always, I'm with Bradon. Share Cohen. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Jim. What's going on, man?
Oh, not much. Busy week. I am a baseball coach, so I have provincials starting this week. We had 3 practices this week. We got 3 games this weekend, so it's a little nutty. But and then life as usual goes on and on and on. But sure. I did get a chance to keep up with wrestling, so I'm well equipped. I hope to get into the episode this week. What about you? Have you been? You got your job coming up? Not right now, but like in a week or something, don't you?
Yeah, it's a few weeks away still, but trying to make sure I have everything in order before that. Take care of all the other obligations I have because they're not going away. Just got to kind of shift my my current schedule to fit my new schedule, but that'll be fun. Yeah,
just live your life as much as you can for the next 2 weeks before you got to work the nitty-gritty all the time. So you get a chance to watch Raw and SmackDown this week?
Yeah, I watched Raw twice, actually. I only skimmed through SmackDown. But Raw was, you could already feel Paul Heyman's presence, couldn't you?
Yeah, I'm curious, though. I've read multiple articles. I've seen people's opinion that this was, Paul Heyman's fingerprints all over the show. And then I've read that Paul Heyman and Vince McMahon just sort of worked cohesively together, figured out the show, and that's what you got. So I don't exactly know, and maybe we'll never know how much Paul Heyman had to do with that show, but there were parts of Raw that screamed Heyman to me. I watched it and I'm like, oh, this is a Heyman thing, right? Like the Street Profits.
Yeah,
I can't imagine.
So good, man.
Yeah, and I can't imagine why Vince would have brought those guys on at this, because my take is he knows nothing about them. Like he probably is like, who are they? And Heyman worked the segment with them, like one of the 3 or 4 that they were on the show. Yep. And he was in there one where they were really bugging him and stuff. Like it just had Heyman's fingerprints all over it, right? The opening segment probably had Heyman's fingerprints on it. And the Maria and Mike Kanellis thing, I think that had Heyman's fingerprints on it. Although it probably had the massive green light from Vince McMahon because he loves that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like you're saying, you're not sure. Like obviously, there's certain things that say Paul Heyman was pretty much his show this week. Some say that he and Vince McMahon made decisions together. That's fine. But if Paul Heyman is there and he's whispering in Vince's ear, regardless, I would say that he's an influential enough person that he was able to get as much as he wanted on there, regardless, right? Even if it was him and Vince, quote unquote, working together, Paul Heyman got what he wanted. Corey Graves swearing. The explosions, I think the explosions were a bit overdone, which might be, could be where Vince McMahon came into play, where they're like, well, we need it to be like 3 minutes straight of explosions through the stage, like the screens. Yeah. But well, just fine. I thought it was a really good angle. I thought them like Corey swearing, and then after time and after them like realizing what had happened, and after the commercial break, hearing them talk like kind of solemnly, like it was terrifying. We couldn't see their legs moving and just like standing over them, like going into a very somber mindset after realizing it. It seemed very real. We know that obviously.
There were so many smart things about that segment. Like one, it lasted a really long time, which if it's going to be legit, it can't just be like 3 or 4 minutes. You got to do the stunt. You got to like keep and the wide camera angle. They only had one camera angle and it was like up in the stands, but from behind the crowd. I loved that. It was just like, okay, the cameramen near the scene aren't even there. Like it's so dangerous. They're not even close. All we have is this one angle from way up high. Yeah, the fireworks and the sparks were pretty whatever, but I understand why they did it because the whole sell point of that segment was that they fell into the lighting board, the electronics section of the show.
Yeah, there's random wires and stuff there.
There's a gazillion things back there, right?
It's huge LED boards, of course, yeah.
Right, so they wanted to sell the danger of all that. And it was really good. I mean, we'll get into the whole Corey Graves comment and the holy whatever moment, and then even Lashley's promo after, if you saw it. He did a video where he addressed, Braun Strowman and stuff like that. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, like I thought that segment was really well done. And the best part about it was a shock. Like you didn't see it coming, right? They got the Falls Count Anywhere match. It's the match that they sort of had over and over. Braun and Lashley have been working a program together for a while. And you thought to yourself, oh man, here we go again. And then all of a sudden it just turned a left corner and you're like, wow, this got good in a hurry. And it was so vastly different from things that we've seen on Raw in forever. I think the last thing that sort of reminds me of that is when, the original Nexus came to the ring and just destroyed everybody, John Cena in the ring, and tore everything apart. Like that was that sort of a shocking moment for me.
Yeah.
Like it was
even like I don't want to say the Dean Ambrose attacking Seth Rollins and stuff was like a super big like shock in this degree, but it was shocking, right? Like the way he did it, the way they executed it the same night that Roman and Nancy had leukemia. Shocks like that are great because they're long lasting. I remember when I can name a few: Edge versus Matt Hardy, the side effect off the stage; Jeff Hardy swantoning Randy Orton off the 30-foot like stanchion or whatever, the big rig. Like all stuff like that. You can think of examples like that because there's shock factor. Whenever there's an explosion, there's shock factor, or there's like chaos, you really remember it. And I thought they executed this one pretty much to perfection, to the point where the crowd, this is the first segment of the night, don't forget, and the crowd doesn't really care so much about Bobby Lashley or Braun Strowman right now. And they were chanting, "This is awesome," right? Like unprompted, nothing to prompt it other than what they had seen 15 minutes into the show. So good way to start the show off. Paul Heyman literally wanted to come in with a bang, and I mean he did. So
yeah, and what I really liked about it was the fact that it was the two guys and they were strong and they were big and they were fighting everywhere in the arena, but they used the stage prop like it was a prop, right? Like if you remember, like what was it, Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack when they were in the dumpster and the New Age Outlaws dumped them off the stage. Like you never saw that coming, and you're just like, whoa, that's a crazy moment. Or like I said, when the Nexus tore the ring apart, you just didn't see that coming, and that was where this sort of reminded me, okay, they're using the set now as a tool to get these two guys over, which I loved, right? Like that was really cool about that whole segment. And the realism of it, I think, is where maybe Heyman's fingerprints were on it. Like, let's keep that one camera angle. Let's do this. I don't know if what Corey Graves said was a Heyman thing or a Vince McMahon thing, but, like it was just really whatever. Was that your favorite moment of the show, or there were a couple segments in there that we touched on at the very beginning, whether it was the Mike and Maria Kanellis thing or the Street Profits or the reunion of the club. Like, what was your favorite moment of that show?
First, I'll say I also liked like the one camera man running towards the scene, and then the fire extinguisher going. That was pretty good. But my favorite segment, there was a few. I can name a few that I liked at the very least.
This is harkening back to the very first time we did the podcast. We're like winners and losers, right?
Yeah.
The Miz moments or whatever we called them, the O'Reilly moment, right? Yeah. Okay, so go.
So yeah, you are right. It really is what we used to do. And I like it. Right now, before I even get into it, I love that there are multiple moments that I liked this week. Yeah. I thought Raw was tremendous. The best I've seen in years, maybe. So
much better than the shows. The shows have been decent for the last couple of weeks, but
they've gotten better.
This was easily the best Raw of the year so far.
100%, not even close. I would say my favorite moments, obviously this was a good one. This isn't even my top 3, I would say, though. This is a really good moment, good start to the show. Production was done well, but I loved pretty much every Street Profits segment. I thought they killed it. They're just a mid-card tag team. They're not going to be your number one superstar team, but let them have these moments on the microphone, and they're going to get you entertainment value. Like you're going to want to sit there and watch it. You're not going to change the channel when the Street Profits are on TV. Whether you liked or you hated Enzo and Cass, on the mic they were fun to listen to, right?
Yeah. I haven't paid attention to them as much on NXT
because they're not pushed huge on NXT.
Well, I was shocked at how good they were. Like in terms of their mic work and their chemistry, like they reminded me, and people are going to hate me for saying this, but or Enzo and Cass, but they can wrestle. You know what I mean? Like when Enzo and Cass were in NXT and they were really good on the mic, and you just followed every word they said, and you just clung to what they were doing, and you follow. And then when they made their debut in the main roster, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's Enzo and Cass!" Right? Like you were so excited. The Street Profits will be that, but my guess is that they won't be as controversial backstage. It won't be as big as pain in the ass. They can
they
do everything in the ring that Enzo and Cass could not do, and Enzo and Cass proved to be a couple schmucks, right? Where the Street Profits are going to be like very big if they keep getting the spotlight like this. So I was shocked. I was like, wow, these guys are really good. Like, I was amazed at how energetic they were. Like, when you talk about guys taking a brass ring and stealing the moment that they're getting, even though it's a really small snippet of a moment, those guys grab that by the, you know what, the grapefruits, as Vince McMahon would say, right? Like, they totally took advantage of the opportunity. Good for them.
Yeah, so like them, Crime Time, Enzo and Cass on the mic, teams like that you want to see when they're out there, like fun, you know, like not even just teams, but anyone that can go out there. R-Truth is now one of them. Whenever he talks, calling Drake Maverick Hornswoggle and stuff, and like it's fun. It's just good television at that point because not everything has to be. Even at Fyter Fest, we'll get into it later. There were a lot of comedic moments in between, a lot of them. You know, there's nothing wrong with comedic value on a wrestling show. But yeah, I liked that. I loved everything about the Street Profits. Like they're already very over in my mind. They were really, really good. I liked, honestly, this might not be popular either. Becky and Seth, their awkward vibe together is really funny to me. Like it's just like, well, I wouldn't lose your title. You wouldn't lose my title, would you? Like, of course not. Anything can happen though. Yeah, but not that. Well, of course not that. You know, like just stuff like that was fun. That was even like the week before that and everything. But on TV, they're really good together. That led to the Maria comment of like, you know, berating Mike Bennett or Mike Kanellis, which I didn't like so much. I understand why they're trying to like get Maria over and stuff for that value, but why are you going to bury Mike Kanellis, who was just like rebranded and pushed on 205 Live? Now he gets a shot on Raw against the Universal Champion like, in that match, and all of a sudden he gets built like a jobber. I don't really get the point of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm confused as to where they're going with this. Like I'm 50-50.
Especially if she's pregnant.
Well, I got into a whatever with somebody on Twitter about this because they were like, I've never seen a burial so bad in my entire life. And yes, if you look at it for what it was in that exact moment, it looks like an absolute burial. But I'm going to give it some time because it could be an absolute burial. Like, I'm reading articles now that Maria didn't tell WWE that she was pregnant again right before they signed their extensions. And so this might be a result of that, them being frustrated, going, man, we just gave you whatever it was, 5-year deals. And you're going to leave right away because you're going to go on pregnancy leave or whatever, right? Or I'm reading that this is the start of something for Mike Kanellis, like where he sort of rebels and is like, no, I am not what you say I am. I'm not your bitch. I'm not a man. Like, he might step up and be, you know, he might fight back. And if that's the case, then good. This has to start somewhere. And the only way that it can start is just to bury the snot out of him. And then he picks himself up and he fights back and he proves that he's not what everybody thinks he is. If they go that route, then I'm totally okay with it. If they don't, and they just brought him on TV to do what they just did, and then we never see him again, yeah, it's not so good.
Yeah, but I agree with that.
She's very opinionated. Like, she goes on social media, she talks about her contract, and she has opinions about it. There's no way, to me, at least, I don't know the situation, but there's no way to me that she's going on there and calling her husband a bitch and being okay with it if it's not going somewhere. You know what I mean?
I mean, like, you would hope so. And with Paul Heyman, I hope so. But under like previous writing staffs, I don't know that that's the case.
It might not be. It might. And I can't discount people that are like, that was awful, because you don't know. Maybe we won't see them again for weeks.
It's the Dolph Ziggler thing where you were right. Dolph Ziggler didn't win, but you weren't even going to give him the time of day to get a chance to win, because we've seen so many times before where they just don't give it to him, right? So if they make you so jaded, it's hard to change your opinion on stuff. But
the reason I'm not 100% sold that this isn't going somewhere is because of the situation that we're hearing about with guys like the Revival, Sasha Banks, perhaps, who got like maybe a potentially new contract offer, even though she just signed last year. All these people who were maybe threatening to leave or wanted to go elsewhere, and now WWE's turning around going, okay, well, we'll give you a push and we'll see what you do. Like the Revival are tag team champions right now, stuff like that, right? Like, these guys were at their wits' end and they were going to leave. They ended up staying for the money. But maybe WWE said, okay, well, we'll give you a shot. Like, we'll see what you can do. If it doesn't work, well, you're back to where you were. If it does, good on you for proving us wrong. So maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. And if it's true that she's actually pregnant and didn't tell anybody right before they signed their contract extensions, I could see why WWE might be a little miffed about that. But I like the segment. I'm waiting to see where it goes. I won't like the segment if it goes nowhere, and I will like it if it goes somewhere. You know what I mean?
Becky also handled it really well, when she was like going to hit her. Then she's like, "Wait, are you serious?" Just kind of like puts her hands up, walks away, like, I'm not even gonna touch that, and then she just like walks off screen. Really funny to me. But my favorite segment, and apparently this wasn't because of Paul Heyman's creative switch. Obviously I've made it very clear that I'm as big an AJ Styles fan as it gets. AJ Styles turning heel and his reunion with the club, which apparently Paul Heyman, like, this was in the works for a while now. Apparently, this is what the report is. I would assume that Paul Heyman had a hand in making it look so good and look, so believable. And also, I like that it's not like a comedic thing. They looked very serious in the ring. It wasn't like a jokester thing. They looked legitimate, right? They looked like a legitimate faction. I'm fine with the comedic elements, but right now they didn't seem to be looking for anything funny. They looked to just be, killing Ricochet. So good on them, giving the club a direction, giving AJ Styles. AJ Styles doesn't need constant attention. He'll always make something out of nothing. But he was kind of just treading water for a bit on Raw, right? After the Seth Rollins match, what has he done really?
Yeah, he's had the injury and he's sort of been out, and this is getting over. Here, I have two questions for you about this. One, did you get the same feeling that I got in watching the end segment there? For a brief moment, I thought Ricochet was going to turn.
Oh, that would have been really cool.
I just was thinking, I love what they did. I love the idea that AJ Styles and the club are back together. I'm totally okay with that. But there was a moment there where I thought, oh my God, Ricochet's going to turn. He's the last guy that you would think would turn. He's so babyface, and he's like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Like, everybody loves him. You can't even imagine him as a heel, but he would probably be a very good heel.
He might be better as a heel because you don't expect it.
For a second, I thought he was going to do it. And then the other part about it was, oh man, I lost my train of thought there.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, it's not a big deal. Oh, yes. The idea that maybe Finn Balor comes and joins them. Would you be for that, or you'd be against it?
Totally for that.
Yeah, me too. Because I don't see him doing anything right now, and having a title in the club, like the Intercontinental Championship, and this whole brand split thing is totally toast. Like, they're really not doing anything with it. So why not? Right? Like, absolutely get the original club back together with AJ Styles as the head of it. Oh my God, can you imagine? Fans would go crazy. Like, they would absolutely love it. Some people wouldn't, because Finn Balor has never been a heel, but
he was a heel in Japan, right? New Japan.
Sure. But WWE fans don't really know him as one.
Yeah, but they don't have to.
No, that's
Finn
true.
Balor. Finn Balor is such a unique character that we haven't seen in WWE really, where he has like the split personality thing and like the demon and stuff. But I would love to see him back together. I don't know that. I think he would benefit from the club more than AJ Styles would. If AJ Styles and Finn Balor switched places, where AJ Styles was the IC champion and Finn Balor was at the front of the club, that might be the better option. Putting Finn Balor and AJ Styles would only make Finn Balor look like the secondary option, right? Even though he was definitely the leader, the first leader of the Bullet Club.
You know what though? I see where you're going, but I don't agree, only because I think that if you put Finn Balor second fiddle, AJ Styles is the natural leader. Eventually, you could work yourself into a program where Finn Balor gets frustrated that he's not the leader.
Sure.
Right? So you could build that up really slowly, like The Rock and Nation of Domination against Farouk. Like, how he was like, I'm the guy here. Like, I know Farouk's the head of this, and I don't like that he's the head. Like, that can be slowly built up to a Finn Balor, AJ Styles feud, the guy who runs the club. You know what I mean? Like, that could really go somewhere if WWE slow played that properly. Yep. So I'd be totally okay with it. I'm okay with Finn Balor being the leader too, but I think it's early. Get the club everybody knows, which is AJ Styles and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson together. Finn Balor joins them, and there you go, right? And then you could work yourself into it. But the idea that there are now factions, that's one of the things. I wrote an article on Wrestling Write-Ups where I said, here's what you can expect from Eric Bischoff and Paul Heyman. And one of the things at the top of my list were the factions were going to come back in.
Factions are the best.
Oh, and you got two guys that loved him, right? Especially Bischoff, who stole NWO from Japan and really built factions up in WCW like crazy, right? Like, he's the guy that really pushed the idea of the NWO so much to the point where he overpushed it and it kind of, diluted itself and it wasn't very good at the end. But he's totally going to do it, right? So it just happened to be Heyman on Raw this time. But you can see that coming. Like, those factions are going to be a major deal. And that's why I think at some point Undisputed Era is going to come up. And they may build something out of like the Cesaro, Robert Roode, whatever, right? Where they have the old Dangerous Alliance kind of thing going on. Mm-hmm. I totally see that too.
I don't think Finn Balor is going to end up with Bullet Club or Clubs. Sorry, that's slip of the tongue. It's Bullet Club though, right? Like, that's obviously what it is.
Yeah, to the diehards, that's how they know it.
I don't see that happening, but wouldn't it be so smart to do that? Right? Like, it would be
Well,
so
here's the deal,
clever.
though. We used to say that when Vince was running the show, but now Vince not running the show. Heyman's a major voice in creative. Bischoff's a major voice in creative. I think they're smarter, right? Like, don't you think they'd see it?
I
Like
think
that
they
they
could,
would
but
go, hey, shoot, like Balor was associated with these guys. We know that. It makes logical sense to play this up. I think they would see it. And if nothing else, they're pitching it to Vince McMahon, going, dude, you can't ignore this. Like, this is why you brought us here. This is why you're asking for our opinion. This is something that cannot be ignored. The fans are aware of it. We need to tease this idea if we don't go full ahead with it. Right. So I think there's going to be a lot of things that we used to take for granted. They were like, yeah, that makes total sense. Oh, Vince won't do it. He's an idiot. Now that's not going to happen so much.
well, just because like Balor is just about to start his feud or his angle with Shinsuke, so I'm not sure how they would incorporate it. The wild card rule, which isn't even a thing anymore, really, but it is. But like being able to jump across brands might help, right? Because he can still do his thing on SmackDown, no problem. You don't have to be on the same show to be a faction, in the traditional sense, at least. So I am curious to see what they do here. I would like they've teased it before with Finn Balor and like AJ Styles, Finn Balor in the club, all four of them together. They've teased it, but it's never been a thing where we've seen it. Obviously, even in Japan, we never saw AJ Styles and Finn Balor in the same club, right? Because AJ Styles replaced Finn Balor pretty much, and then Kenny Omega was there. Kenny Omega took over the torch from him. So what a just an amazing factions history when you look at it. The talent they've had in that group. I'm gonna go to the top from like top to bottom. You've got AJ Styles and Finn Balor, Kenny Omega, Adam Cole. You're talking four of the best in the world. Just those four. It doesn't even include Cody or the Young Bucks or Anderson and Gallows or any of the other, million members. It really became NWO. But when you look at just some of the people that were in that group, you're talking about like top 10 of the world. Amazing.
Yeah, it was unreal. Like, it was so popular for like a year and a half. Like, as popular as NWO was.
I still want a shirt. I don't have a Bullet Club shirt. I might get one. Just because. Get myself a cleaner shirt.
Yeah, no, they were awesome. I don't know what the story is, and we've talked about this in the past. I don't think they can use the name, and I don't think they will now that the club has got some cachet among the fan base. But yeah, no, I think it was good. Yeah, I agree with you. That was my favorite part of the whole show, the club reunion, because I didn't really see it coming, even though they've sort of teased it in the last couple weeks with Gallows and Anderson talking to AJ Styles and then pumping each other up or teasing each other. Like, I thought that was really well done. It was just such a good show all the way around. Now, I didn't think SmackDown was as good, but I still thought SmackDown was pretty decent.
Yeah, it's again, a lot of these 2 out of 3 falls matches and stuff, and these big, like, very overproduced matches in general. But I thought they kind of reeled it back a bit this week. It wasn't so obvious, but I will say that Seth Rollins also made the rounds in the news for the wrong reasons and then the right reasons, and we didn't really talk about that, did we?
Yeah, well, we can. I mean, I think we touched on it last week where we said that he was kind of going crazy on social media, standing up for WWE and the performers and stuff like that. So it was good, but then there was an apology that came out because he realized he sort of crossed the line. I'm all for these guys standing up for their own brands or their own talents or being confident and bragging about their abilities. But what I didn't love was that he made the comment about the bank accounts, that he was calling them, little guy and buddy. Like, he was playing the WWE character,
which is crazy because he's an indie guy.
Right.
You forget about it almost.
Yeah, but I mean, he's been in WWE long enough and he's made the money now that it probably goes away pretty quickly, right? And he said, when he's an apology, he's like, the second I sent that tweet out, I knew it was trash. I should have never done it. Now, I don't know if this is him realizing he made a mistake or WWE's like, dude, that's not a good look. Like, why would you do that? Maybe WWE doesn't even care. I don't know.
But I don't think WWE even cares.
Yeah. But it was, Will Ospreay didn't seem to care too much that he was even in a Twitter war. He's like, whatever, dude. Like, It's not a big deal.
For people that didn't see it, like Seth Rollins pretty much said, like, I took a few days, I sat on it, I realized, hey, that's kind of like a dick move, what I said and what I did. He basically said, like, he's too stubborn, I think that's the word he used, for his own good. And that's when he kind of realized a few days later, like, you know what? I think that WWE is the best company in the world, no doubt in my mind. But at the same time, there's no reason to compare bank accounts. And pretty much he apologized for it and said, like, hey, it was just garbage. There were garbage tweets, and I can and will be better. And I think on Raw they kind of touched on it too, when they were like backstage again. It was Becky and Seth, and it was the whole like impulsive thing. And they asked Becky, and she's like, psh, huh,
Yeah.
psh, huh, psh, psh, like for like 15 seconds, maybe even more than that. It was a long time.
Yeah.
And then it's like never. And I thought they were kind of like making fun of him for that.
I'm sure they were.
Which is good. Like you can laugh at yourself. And Will Ospreay basically said like, it's totally cool with me, man. I thought it was just some banter back and forth. And he said like, I've been watching you since you were in the Indies, Tyler Black. So I know you're great, right? No one's taking anything away from him. And we kind of touched upon that last week too, where we said, at least I was obviously a bigger fan of Seth Rollins. You like Rollins, but I'm a bigger fan of him than you are.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was an indie guy. He was an indie darling. He was considered among that like top 5, top 10 of the world at one point during his indie run, and that's why when he went to WWE, he was so popular. He was easily the most popular member of the Shield, and I would say he's the only reason he isn't the most popular member coming out of that group is because Jon Moxley just blew up at an epic proportion. We'll see if he can keep that, kind of like Becky Lynch. She's still super popular, but she's not as popular as she was, to the point where I even saw on Twitter today people were questioning what's a better gimmick, the man or the last kicker. I think it's unquestionably the man, but some people aren't so sure anymore. So it's hard to keep that over mentality or that over persona. Not everyone can do it. That's why someone like AJ Styles and like someone even like Kenny Omega, who are both still huge and super over, despite so much time passing from when they first like broke out, it's really impressive. But yeah, Seth Rollins, definitely stupid move. Good on him to apologize. Like you said, maybe it wasn't sincere, but from what I saw, it looked really sincere, and Ospreay doesn't seem to care. I do wonder if he reached out behind the scenes though, like messaged him or texted him or something. It's like, hey man, seriously, I'm gonna tweet this, or I tweeted that, but like I mean it. Sorry, dude. So I wonder how that works.
Be. I don't know if that. I mean, maybe it's hard to know if people consider Twitter like texting someone nowadays. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Sent the message out there, apologize. This is my apology to you. Or if people actually take that other step and say, dude, I'm sorry. I'm gonna tweet out an apology. It was stupid of me to do that. Like I don't know what people consider Twitter to be nowadays. I think it's like useful for us, and there's a reason we have it, and we can keep up to date, and we get information way faster. But I think it's also just a hateful cesspool of negativity, right? Like
it's the worst. It's
the worst. The only thing worse is maybe Facebook, just because you like a comment and no one even reads the stuff, or they just call you names. Like it's just whatever. You just sort of brush it off your shoulders, which is what Will Ospreay did. He just like, whatever, dude. Like you don't get too wrapped up in it. If you do, it's just going to drive you nutty. But yeah, I the one thing I will say though is, and we'll talk about it. Maybe we'll get on it now. Is that of the popular guys, you thought Seth Rollins was the most popular guy of the Shield? I think by far it's Roman Reigns.
Popular?
Mainly because like popular as in well known. Everybody is like more household name.
I meant fan favorite more than anything. Like
okay, well yes, then for sure it's not
Roman Reigns, who's going to win a popularity contest. It's
he's
not
such a
Roman
mixed
Reigns.
bag. Like and it may be the case that like when it's half split, some people love Roman, some people hate him. There's still almost as many as that half who love him that are like as many Seth Rollins fans. But I mean, mainstream appeal, like movies and crossover and stuff. I mean, it's Roman Reigns hands down. Yeah. But I mean, it's that was what made the Shield so fun, right? Like they were three somewhat similar individuals, but also different in their own ways. And I do think that you have to consider that AEW, while very popular with the diehard fans, isn't nearly, not yet anyway, isn't nearly as household a name and mainstream as some of us diehard internet guys want it to be. We talk about it all the time and go, man, this is fantastic, but there's still such a large segment of the audience that don't even know what it is. That's going to take a little time, right, for a guy like Jon Moxley to really be as popular as we think he is right now. And us major fans, we know what he is and what he could be, and when they get on TV, what he might be. But right now, it's still not even close in terms of WWE's popularity over AEW. But the Roman Reigns stuff, we could finally talk about it. Yay!
Before that, because I want to talk about that. I want it to be definitely a big thing. I do want to like just quickly talk about AEW and how like it's not as big as we think it is, and it isn't. Yeah. You're right. They had 38,000 traditional pay-per-view buys for Double or Nothing, but when you count the like Bleacher Report Live and the Fight Network stuff, it went up to 108,000 buys, which is incredible. And then if you go to Fyter Fest, which is obviously free, and we'll talk about it later, I'm sure we'll brush upon it, 350,000 unique logins for Fyter Fest.
Yeah, no, they don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting what they have done so far,
Yeah,
for
no, I'm just
sure.
saying, like, good for them. Like,
And
those are big
compared to like
numbers.
TNA, compared to ECW, compared to Ring of Honor, I mean, they're crushing them in terms of where they were at any point.
But
It's not
WWE
even.
is still 20 times as
It's
big,
yeah, it's still way bigger. Like it's going
which
to
is
take time.
it's natural. WWE's been around for, yeah, let's say, WWE and like its influence has been around for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah,
AEW is like 5 months old.
yeah,
They've had 3 shows,
yeah.
so
And all due respect,
technically two.
they are absolutely doing the best that they can do. You couldn't have asked for a better result so far.
Sure.
The fact that they don't have a TV show, they're basically using social media to promote themselves. Like they're doing fantastic. It's just
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Now,
The big fan. Oh,
you want
sorry.
to go
Go ahead.
Fighter Fest first, or you want to go Roman Reigns first?
Let's go Roman Reigns first.
Okay, so we've been teasing this. We've been talking about it. I'm so finally happy that they took the embargo off this. So here's what happened. I did an interview with Roman Reigns to promote Hobbs and Shaw. Brisk has these cans of whoop ass that they're promoting for the movie. He's in a new commercial that you can see on our website. You can see on the Sportster.com. Basically, he is their spokesperson for these Brisk cans of whoop ass, and he did a media tour, and we were lucky enough at the Sportster to get an interview with Roman Reigns. So I talked to him for about 20 minutes about I was supposed to talk about his WWE title, leukemia, his family legacy, schedule. We did all that. And then I wasn't really supposed to talk about other stuff, but I did it anyway. And he was super cool, and he answered all the questions, and we got really good stuff out of it. Now, have you read or seen any of the articles that I wrote after the interview that I finally released out to the public? Have you read any of them?
I'll be honest, I didn't know they were out yet, so I'm excited. I'm
Okay.
actually
So I got a bunch of them on
I
the
really wrote that down,
Sportster.com.
to be honest.
And I'll tell you basically the juiciest bits of the whole thing so far. So one,
Right.
let's just get this out of the way. Roman Reigns is an awesome dude. Like
Right.
he is so cool. Like just talking to him, he is not what you see on TV. Like he seems a little quiet and maybe he needs a little help with his promos and stuff. Man, that guy was really well spoken when I talked to him on the phone. Now maybe it was because he had done a number of these interviews and maybe he answered some of these questions the same. I don't know, but he was extremely confident about his abilities. He was very well spoken. He got his points across that he needed to get, which was he was talking about his leukemia and the treatments for it and where you can go to get research on it, all that kind of stuff. Like really well done. And I was like super impressed with him. So that was first and foremost. Second, he was not shy about answering some of the tougher questions. And I know when we do interviews with people and stuff, everybody's like, oh, don't be such a sissy. Ask him the tough questions. Well, I tried to ask a couple. I asked him directly about John Moxley going to AEW. I asked him if he's leaving WWE for movies. I asked him all that stuff, and he answered all of it. So
That's
it
amazing.
was really cool. So the juiciest things were one, he absolutely unequivocally does not think AEW is a competitor. Not
Okay.
in the least. Like he thinks it's another option is what he called it. He said, yeah, you want another option for guys who aren't happy here or other wrestlers around the globe who need another paycheck. AEW is a good option. Outside of that, WWE is WWE. They're global. They do 100,000 seat shows a couple times a year. Like no one can touch them. And he said from top to bottom, and he's like, and then he corrected himself. He's even at the bottom. He's like, we don't have a bottom. Like we are the best. Our roster is the best. Like he was so confident in his ability and he pumped the tires at WWE so well that he had me believe in it. And I'm kind of like, he's actually right. If you look at it as a whole, now part of it is the numbers. WWE has so many more roster guys than any other company that it should be that they have the most and the best.
Yeah.
But there are some really good guys outside WWE, so we can't discredit that. And we talked about some of them, whether it's Kenny Omega or Will Ospreay or Pac or whomever. Like some of these guys are fantastic, right? But
The thing is,
WWE
they're
from
all kind
top
of
to
spread
bottom
around,
is really
right?
good. What's
Yeah.
that?
They're all kind of spread around on the indies. Like now AEW is starting to like compile a list of a bunch of really good talent together. But in general, you've got people in New Japan, you got people in Ring of Honor, you got people at AEW. There's smaller promotions, right? Even like AAA, just Impact. There are a lot of people kind of everywhere where you don't really get to see them all in one place. WWE scooped so many of them up at this point where you can't say they're not the best roster. Whether they're used or not in the best way doesn't mean that they don't have the best roster.
Yes, and that's exactly it. They need to be discovered. They need to be pushed in the proper way, and then they will be clearly hands down. And I'm already seeing the transition. I'm already watching some of the matches on Raw and SmackDown lately, and the focus, and we talked about stomping grounds, how the matches were so good. They're starting to showcase them properly, so the in-ring guys are getting their due, which is fantastic. The second thing he said was, I asked him, I said, how come you were able to do this movie when you were off diagnosed with leukemia? I have an older sister who, when I was a kid, had leukemia, so I sort of know the idea of how hard that can be on your body and physically draining and all that kind of stuff. So how'd you do the movie? And he's like, well, actually, my diagnosis freed me up to do the movie. Other than that, I wouldn't have been able to do it. He said, but I didn't do anything physical in the movie. He's like, the movies are magic because you can go in there and do your acting stuff and the close-ups on your face. And he's like, the stunt doubles do the rest. Amazing. So he's like, yeah, he's like, I didn't do anything. He's like, I didn't have to do stunts. I didn't have to do nothing. He's like, nothing like the ring at all. He's like, so that was the only reason I was able to do the movie. And I said, did you get the bug? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, the magic of it, and they're making you a star, and The Rock was so helpful, trying to turn everybody into a megastar. It's just really cool. He said to me that he's not lost the bug for WWE. There's nothing like the feeling of the one-on-one interaction and the live crowd feeding you, and that he's still got a lot he wants to do, and he's not at all leaving wrestling yet. If he can do some of these projects on the side, he'll do them. But he told me in a couple of years, he's going to transition out of wrestling. So I thought that was very interesting. To me, even though not everybody loves him, he's still very much at the top of his game. And in 2 years, he'll still be very much at the top of his game. So to think already that you might be ready to move on. Now, I don't think he's leaving. I don't get the sense that he's just going to all of a sudden disappear and do films. But I think he said, he's like, I want to put a couple more layers on this legacy of my family and the Noah family and all that kind of stuff. I'll put a couple more bricks on there, and then I'm going to start transitioning out when my body can't handle it anymore. So I don't know if that means he's dealing with some injury type stuff, or he just feeling like, look, I'll have done everything I wanted to do in the next 2 years. I'm going to start moving in another direction. But I don't see him sticking around all that long. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, and then, I saw the headline for that one. I didn't realize it was from your interview, which is great. It's a great insight. Yeah, so that was really cool. And then, other than that, he's talked about, his being sick and, what he thinks about the roster and all. I mean, there's some really cool stuff to the point where he was like, yeah, WWE is not like the movies. The movies, everybody works together. In WWE or any of the rest, it is everyone for themselves. Like he said, it's an alpha male run business. Like it's absolutely a lion's den. You got to be willing to crack a few eggs and stand in there and take some hits. And you got to be competitive because everyone's out for themselves. And it was quite interesting to hear that side of it. Like he did it in a very respectful way, but it was like, oh, okay. Like you want to think these guys are all working to elevate themselves, and in a way that they are, but they're all very aware that there's only so much room at the top, and you gotta get in there. Like you gotta do it, which I don't think was a shot, but it made me think about Moxley and his interviews and the stuff that he said after he left WWE and how much he thought the political stuff was a real problem and he couldn't get his ideas over it and blah, blah, blah. I just get the sense that he just gave up. Like he was like, I'm not going to keep fighting for this. I said what I wanted to say. They're not going for it. Like he just sort of saw the writing on the wall and said, look, this is just way too much politics for me, way too much work. I'm never going to get the push I deserve. So he was like, I'm out. Whereas a guy like Roman Reigns might have had a little more given to him. But at the same time, like he wanted to do what he wanted to do. He wasn't ready to give up. And then there he is. He's at the top of the game, right? So I thought that was very interesting and very telling because it gives you a little more insight as to what's going on behind the scenes, right? Yeah, for sure. And I mean, well, I don't think it's a shot at Moxley. I agree with you that
I don't think so either.
I think he meant not everyone's cut out for it. And Moxley, right. I mean, he may fall into the group of people not cut out for it. But also, Moxley also fell into the group of people who just got dealt a bad hand. No matter what he did in WWE, he never would have gotten over. Even when he was given the World Championship, he was the WWE champion. He beat Rollins and he was over on SmackDown as the champion. That was shocking to me. It was a really boring run. And part of that is due to the character he was given, right? And part of that is due to whatever was, what he was handed. You can only do so much as far as getting yourself over. But he's not, he's shown now, like, he can do whatever it takes. He's nothing special as a character now. Nothing is super important about his character that's different or super entertaining, so to speak. But he's just so over right now. Like, if I look at Moxley, he's not my favorite wrestler in the world, not even close, right? I don't think anything's really different about this now than, like, what Dean Ambrose was, minus some of the stupidity and, like, the weird comedy factor. He still has some humorous, like, he's kind of standoffish. I don't know how to describe it. But you know what I mean. He's kind of little quirks about him, but he's able to use that and actually get over. So he's shown that he can do it, and WWE just it wasn't working for him with that environment. So this is best for everyone. But as far as the Roman Reigns stuff goes, I mean, yeah, I always got the vibe from him that he's just a pretty cool guy. You know, I don't think he's got a mean bone in his body. The guy seems to be a very family oriented, whether it's like literally his like immediate family or like even the Samoan heritage, like everyone in his family's cousins and everything like that. Seems to be a cool guy, laid back guy. Did you ever see the Aleister Black thing? Aleister Black was talking about it after Reigns got diagnosed with leukemia. He basically said he was in a locker room and he used to go and like clean up everything after the shows and stuff because like that's what you do. You clean the locker room, make sure it's clean for the next guy. And Roman Reigns once saw him and said, "Hey, you don't do that anymore. Like you're not some young kid that has to clean up for everybody. You belong here. You're good. Don't worry about it." And he's like, that was really cool of him. So even like the wrestlers in the room, whether the fans loved him or hated him. And the boos are starting to come back now, which I think he's fine with. Like you don't want to have those sympathy cheers, but I think he definitely got a lot more fans than he had before. Roman's always seemed like the guy that has the respect of his peers, and more than anything, that's the most important thing. The people that are around you that understand what the grind is like, that understand what the company is like. We can talk about it all we want. We've never been backstage in WWE. We've never seen how like the environment is and how much work goes into everything. We know there's a ton of work. But we've never seen, the huge machine from behind the scenes, or at least we've never lived it. We've seen certain, like, what they've shown us, but we've never lived that experience day after day, week after week, year after year and everything. So when you have people that work in the industry with you that understand what that is and what goes into it, it's better to have their respect than it is the fans who, I mean, they're going to love you one week and hate you the next week regardless. So.
Yep. Yeah, the only thing that he said that I didn't 100% agree with, and I've sort of said this on the shows before about the brand split. He really doesn't like the idea that they're not continuing with the brand split. He really was curious as to whether or not they could make a go of it. Like he said, his exact words were, "I would have really loved to see if the only time you could ever see me was on SmackDown Live, if we could have built the competition between the two brands."
Like, yeah, I want the competition for sure.
Right, and I'm okay with that, but I have watched the shows very closely lately, and I'm kind of liking the idea that these guys are showing up because the matches are so different. Like, yes, they're using a lot of the same guys, but when they show all of a sudden New Day's fighting the Viking Experience or the Viking Raiders, right? Jeez. Stuff like that. Like, those are good matches. And you're like, that's going to be a good match, right? And so I'm okay with the idea that these guys are on both shows because it's giving you the best product you can get. And the matches have been wonderful, right? So I see where he's coming from, and it would have been nice to have that, and maybe we'll get that now with Heyman running one and Bischoff running the other. And I wrote an article about the possible controversy already happening backstage where Heyman and Bischoff were sort of bickering over who they get. You talk about the Street Profits. That was a Heyman thing, from what I'm understanding. He wanted them on the show. He called them up and asked for them to be there. Triple H didn't love the idea because he doesn't think they're ready. But there's already some like, well, who gets who? Like, Bischoff wants certain guys. Heyman's going to want certain guys. Triple H doesn't want any of those guys even coming up because they're not ready, and Vince probably doesn't even know them. So there's already that going on backstage, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But it does speak to the idea that there's a lot going on back there, right? And maybe we'll see a lot more of the brand split now because these guys are, like, after week one, are competing with each other, right? Like, Bischoff wants to get the guy over Heyman. Heyman wants to get the guy over Bischoff. Like, it's just naturally going to be a competition now, and maybe we'll see more of the split. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. We haven't really touched on it. Did you think SmackDown had Bischoff fingerprints on it? Like, we talk about how much Heyman was on Raw. Did you get much out of the show that you thought, oh, that was a Bischoff thing? The only thing that really came out of SmackDown that was a little whatever for me was the brawl at the end and the Kofi Kingston middle finger. Those were the two things that I was like, oh, that was different. Right. Yeah. Other than that, I thought the show was good. I just didn't think it was drastically different like Raw was.
No, not even close. I think Raw was definitely Heyman, and I thought it was really, really good. SmackDown, lackluster, which, I mean, maybe they're still kind of figuring things out there. Maybe they're trying to, maybe Vince wants it to be the B show. I don't know what you would.
Not if they're going to Fox.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't think you'd be allowed to. Imagine telling Fox, look, we want to have a good show, but it can't be as good as NBC's. Yeah, that's $1 billion, just casual $1 billion to not be as good.
No, that's why they're doing what they're doing, right? Like, Fox absolutely has said, we want faces we know, we want faces we recognize. That's why Bischoff is there. Like Fox is familiar with his history in wrestling and WCW and all that stuff. Like that, it's got to be why he's there, right? So same thing with Heyman. People know who Heyman is. He's going to run his own brand. They're going to just naturally make the shows better because they're going to compete with each other. We were going to talk about this, so let's do that now. The non-PG stuff, like we talk about the middle finger, we talk about the Corey Graves holy moment, right? Mm-hmm. What did you think? Do you think they're going away from PG? If they do, I think it's a huge mistake. That said, it was curious. Like I wasn't expecting it, and now you got people talking about it. But what do you think of the fact that both of those little segments were on the shows?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to go away from PG, so to speak, but I think they might move to like kind of push the envelope a bit. Like you said, moving away from it might not be a good call just because they make so much money from the kids and the parents in attendance, right? Like it's a family environment now, as opposed to just like a hardcore teen environment, which is also why I think they're worried they're going to lose the teen fans towards like AEW more than anything. But at the same time, there's always going to be kids that are going to grow up wanting to watch WWE, buying the merch, asking their parents for the headbands and the wristbands and the shirts and the masks and everything, the titles. And so having the PG crowd is important. Could you push it to like PG-13? And then it's still not, it pushed the envelope just enough to where parents have to understand, okay, they might swear now and again or whatever. But it's still fine for kids to watch for 90% of the show. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's PG nowadays, right?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
If you watch a PG movie, I mean, there's SH words in there. There's middle fingers. There's, hell.
I guess it is.
All that stuff is
anyway,
in there,
right? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like, so if they don't do it all the time, that's still PG, right? But I think it would absolutely be a huge. There's a reason they went PG, right? They want to appeal to the kids, and guess what? The kids' parents were WWE fans when they were kids. Like that's how long these guys have been following the product, and WWE has been around. If you just go, hey, I'm sorry, we're not PG anymore, and these parents go, well, my kids can't watch it. Well, guess who also?
A lot of fans, yeah,
the parents, right? So the kids and the parents go, and it would be that's so much money. And you're talking already about WWE having gate issues, pay-per-view buys are down. They're doing 2-for-1 ticket sales for Extreme Rules because they're having a hard time selling the seats. Like, that's already a factor. Why would you go, okay, well, yeah, let's not make this family friendly anymore and tell the parents, well, maybe don't bring your kids. Like, AEW, yes, they're appealing to another audience that's probably a little bit older, but they know what they are. They're an alternative. They are for the hardcore fan who is a little sick of WWE being very, like, bland. But that doesn't necessarily mean that AEW is going PG-13 or mature, although the last pay-per-view was. I just think they're appealing to a different audience, not necessarily only an older audience. I think AEW would make a mistake to ignore the kids, right? Like they should appeal to some of them too, right? Although if you watched MJF, his promo after the thing, I mean, they're not going PG. Like that's for sure. He's dropping F-bombs in his media scrums, right? So, yeah, I don't know. It would be a huge mistake to me. Fyter Fest itself was very not PG. That chair shot, what do you think of that?
So, first of all, this should never be chair shots, right? I'm saying this should be to the head. Sorry. Yeah, unbreak to the head. There's no way. Not like that. That was look. Does it look great? Yeah, it looks really good, and it looks really scary, and it's awesome. But it's really not when you think about the risk. The risk isn't worth the shock factor.
Even a gimmick chair, which is what they're claiming it was, right? That they rigged this chair. It's just stupid.
That still hurts like crazy. I don't care if it's padded. It's still a shot.
Well, and they've got so much information now. Like the CTE stuff is a real deal. Like they've got concussion issues. There are major guys that they would love to have a Daniel Bryan. They would love to have a Daniel Bryan at AEW. But guess what? That guy sat out almost 3 years because he had concussion issues.
Yeah.
Right?
Like really bad, like seizures because of concussion issues.
Yeah, he did diving headbutts all the time. Like you cannot take shots to the head. You just can't. So take a chair shot, but for crying out loud, protect yourself. Mm-hmm. Right? And I saw that. I was like, what are they doing?
If it's one time, I'm okay with it because it's already done and you can't say anything about it. It looked really great. But man, just think about it. Like, you can't do that. You really can't do that in 2019. Not even you shouldn't. You cannot do that. Yeah, there was also a pile driver.
It was a massive mistake.
That was interesting to see. early on. I can't remember who did it, but there was a pile driver, and I was like, wow, that's something you don't see. I mean, literally don't see every day anymore in
Well,
the
it's
big
pretty much
promotions.
only banned in WWE.
It is only banned in WWE.
And the only other guy that could do it is the Undertaker. This Tombstone, and he clearly shouldn't do it anymore after that Goldberg match.
Kane does the best Tombstone in wrestling right now.
Well, because he can do it,
Because
right?
he's not.
Undertaker's. I mean, it is what he is, all due respect, but he's old and weaker now. So to pick up a guy who's 240 pounds or 250 pounds like Goldberg, no.
Yep.
Right? It's just not happening. Like if Undertaker and Roman Reigns are in that match with Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre, do you think he can safely do a Tombstone to Drew McIntyre? No way.
No way.
There's no way he should be allowed to even try it.
He could, but I'm not risking it.
It's way too risky. Right? So there's just no reason to do that. Yeah, I thought that was the first criticism of AEW that I've seen, and they deserved the criticism. And it sort of showed me they are really good and they're doing some really good things, but they still have a lot to learn, and that was a mistake. And they're getting the publicity for it, and everybody's talking about it, and maybe that's what they wanted, and that's some things that people are arguing. It's like, well, hey, the payoff was everybody's talking about it. Yeah, but it's not worth it.
It's not worth the risk, no.
No, had that went wrong, had it gone more wrong, he would have had a concussion.
Dead.
Yeah, absolutely would have had a concussion.
Die. He could, go ahead and kill himself, his wife, and his kid, right? We've seen this stuff happen. This is how Chris Benoit went on that. You can blame Chris Benoit all you want, and obviously he deserves some share of the blame, if not a lot of the share of the blame. I'm not getting into this controversial discussion. The point is, this happened. Be careful with that. I don't care where you say you lie, not you, but like I don't care where the audience stands on it. That's not my point. My point is, this happened because of so many diving headbutts and shots to the head. And it's not an accident. It's not a coincidence. This is what happens. You know what I mean? So you got to think of the long-term health here and the long-term outcome of it. Does a week of conversation amount to the same value as a guy's long-term health? I don't think so. Yeah. But I say long-term, diving off of a 30-foot thing like Jeff Hardy did to Randy Orton, that's dangerous as hell. But I'm sure they took every precaution to make it as safe as possible. And I'm not saying it's safe, but hitting somebody straight in the head with a chair, you cannot make that safe. I don't care how you want to spin it.
Yeah.
So not great. The match was really good.
Yeah,
I thought Darby Allin looked incredible.
Yeah, he did. But even then, I was a little like, dude, like he reminds me a lot of Jeff Hardy, where you see him taking moves that you're like, why would you do that? Like when he took that backsplash off the top rope onto the ring apron.
Oh my God.
I thought, oh my God. See, there's another one, right? Like I thought Fyter Fest was good. I'm not going to say it was a bad pay-per-view because I thought it was a good pay-per-view. But it could have been a really good pay-per-view, like Double or Nothing quality. And I wrote an article about it, and we're going to talk about it because I know you don't agree with me necessarily. But I thought they lost themselves trying to be too much of that. I thought the headshot to the chair, the backsplash onto the ring apron that he didn't need to do, the hardcore match, I thought they were whatever you want to call it, Falls Kennedy or whatever they were, the street fight, non-sanctioned match. I thought it was good, but I thought, man, just a little there's some stuff in there. You're like, that's a little much, right? I thought they sort of tried so hard to do the things WWE wouldn't do that in a way they lost themselves, that they were trying to be too much anti-WWE, and they should have just focused on themselves. And I thought they got lost a little bit. I still thought it was a very good pay-per-view. I didn't like the buy-in. I thought the buy-in was boring as all snot.
Yeah.
But, I thought otherwise it was good. I just think they went overboard.
The buy-in wasn't great. However, I really, really, really liked Mark Quinn from Private Party. He was really good.
He was way better than he should have been, that's for sure.
And I didn't mind, the Bailey stuff wasn't bad. That's more like the gamer side, which I'm fine with. I hated the alley and, the library stuff. That was boring to me. I didn't really understand that.
It was very grating.
Yeah.
It was, I get what they're doing. Like this, I don't know if you know this ASMR stuff where it's like everybody talks really quietly, you turn the mics up full volume, and then you make sounds, and it's all over YouTube. It's like a thing.
Yeah.
Right? This reminds me of that, where they're like, it's such a grating noise that it hits your senses in such a way. But to me, the only thing it does to me is it's annoys the snot out of my senses. Like, it's like, wow, that's really annoying. And when you go overboard with it, you start to hate them. And I guess that's the idea. You're not supposed to like these guys. They're heel, but I mean, it's ridiculous. Like it's beyond silly, right? And it's sort of like they're losing it here. I don't like this at all. And I don't think a lot of people liked it. The characters, you're supposed to hate them, but it was too much for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if I have one complaint about the show, that was it. But I had a few things that really stood out to me. I know you didn't like the Street Fighter stuff, like the cosplay kind of thing. So one, this is like the gamer thing, right? So that's why they did it.
Yeah.
I think it was great. I think it was fantastic. It really added to it. Even like Justin Roberts started with round 1 fight. So good seeing them come as Ken, Ryu, and Akuma. Really great to me. That's more just personal preference, I think. You don't like it, I like it.
Yeah, I didn't hate it. I just think there's a place for it. And
I thought this was the place for it.
yeah, I mean, the show was connected to it. Kenny Omega put this together. It was in conjunction with the CEO stuff. Like it was a gaming pay-per-view basically. So I get exactly why they did it, and I even said that when I wrote it. I'm like, I understand why they're doing this. What I didn't really love was I was cool with it up to a point, and then I'm like, this is like they're trying to sell this off in a way as like a really serious match. And the last match that they had between the Lucha Bros and the Young Bucks was so good. And
yeah, it wasn't as good as the other match.
This is like the rematch, it's like, oh, the revenge match or whatever, but it wasn't built that way at all. And I was really looking forward to, okay, well, here's, round 2 of this extremely awesome match. And this was just more gimmick and personality to me. And there's a YouTube clip where they did this once where they dressed as the Super Mario Brothers and did that whole thing. I thought that was funny, but I was waiting for a much better match. And so I was kind of like, all right. But I get it. I understand why people like it. Like why you liked it, great. I understand why people liked it.
Yeah, the match was good, not great when comparing to the last match. I don't think the gimmicks had anything to do with it. I also think it was funny with like, oh, we don't have our gear. Don't worry, I got his outfits made. And like that's the outfits. Really great. There were a few moments in that match that really stood out to me though. I think it was Nick Jackson. He did like a springboard spike facebuster, and then he like flipped up from the mat through the middle and top rope to the like from the ground onto the apron and did like a moonsault onto Pentagon onto the floor. It was like all so fluid and really great, and I thought it was amazing. And then Laredo doing he springboarded into a V trigger from Kenny Omega. I thought that was really great. And then after that, I mean, the Moxley and Janela fight, there were a few moments there. I don't like blood. I think I talked about it. I hate blood. I can tolerate it in wrestling, but this wasn't like wrestling blood. This was, I mean, I guess it was technically old school wrestling blood, like ECW and stuff. But I can tolerate like, oh, a guy got split open from like, a DDT or something. This was very clearly gruesome barbed wire and like you know what I mean? Like it wasn't normal blood. This was gruesome, gory blood. But there was the moment like we took up the board and there was like or was it the chair? And there's like bloody rags on it from when he put the barbed wire on it.
Yeah,
I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, that was the chair covered in barbed wire. It had like a rag on it with all the blood and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, that whole match was meant to be, this is what Janela is willing to do. This is what Moxley now isn't anymore. Like he's not the PG WWE, right? I thought it was an okay match, but it was a gimmicky show about how hardcore they could get, right? Yeah. And that's what it was. I watched that match, was entertained by that match. I thought it was pretty cool. They took some pictures afterwards, sitting together going, well, we just had a battle, now let's be friends and drink a beer. Like, I was cool with all that. But one of the things that I took out of that match, for me, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I watched that and I thought as soon as it was over, I'm like, this is as big or as crazy as Jon Moxley's probably going to get.
Yes.
And I think it's going downhill from here. Right? Like, I think that at some point they'll give him the title. He'll have a run with the title, the AEW title. But then I think he's going to have hit his peak. And the realization that Jon Moxley is a star, but he's not the guy who can carry your company.
He's not Kenny Omega.
Will sit in and he'll go down, right? And he's capitalizing. Like I'm okay with Moxley. I've never been a huge fan of Jon Moxley or Dean Ambrose. I don't think he is what he thinks he is, which is one of the greatest things in wrestling. I just think he's capitalizing on the perfect opportunity. He left WWE at the ideal time. He got in when AEW was really just becoming a thing. Like I said before, he's like the Scott Hall for WCW, right? Where he got in at the exact right moment and everyone's talking about him, right? And he's willing to do crazy stuff. So they're going to talk about him for a while. But it's going to settle in that he is not as good as everybody's making him out to be, and it will start to go down and then he'll get a little boring. But I thought the match was good. I just sort of I think that might be as good as he's going to get.
There was one moment. Oh, go on. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
There was a moment when Janela had barbed wire in his legs, and he had to grab the barbs with his bare hand and pull it out. And it was I felt it. I could feel it in my hands when he had to actually grab the barbed wire, full fist, like you're picking up a pen or something. He grabbed it, and he like just pulled, and I was like, oh my god, like that's digging into the palms of your hand. Like that's going to be painful for the next month. You know, like those cuts into your bare hand, like your palm. Your palm touches so much air, and like everything you do, your palms touch it. Ugh, your fingers too, like just gruesome. The thumbtacks too, we don't give it enough credit. Jericho mentioned it once. It was, I think, like the Raw after he and Ambrose had their like, I don't even know what the match was called. The one was like a steel cage with a bunch of like a mop and brooms and everything on top of the cage. Remember that one?
Yeah.
The plant and stuff. He had like all the thumbtacks in his back. He's like, I had to take out 83 thumbtacks after the match. We don't think about that. Going in is one thing. They have to individually take every single thumbtack out after.
Yeah.
Horrible.
I didn't love the feet thing. I'm like
no.
Some people have a foot fetish. I'm like the opposite of that.
I don't want to see
I
feet
hate
with
feet.
thumbtacks.
I hate people touching my feet. I hate touching other people's feet. I think feet are about the most disgusting thing on people's body. Like I hate it. Like the idea of something going into my feet. I can't even, like my kids, they walk around in bare feet all the time. I don't know how they do it. I'm just like, I can barely walk around my own house without socks on. Like it drives me crazy. So when all that stuff happened and they focused on the thumbtacks to the feet, I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Entertaining, and I watched it like I would watch a car accident, but like it was just, I was like, oh man. But it was a good show. It was an attraction, right? Like that's what Fyter Fest felt like to me. It was an attraction. It wasn't meant to be what Double or Nothing was, which was putting a stamp on how good your wrestling can be and what kind of a pay-per-view you can put together. It was more of a, we're never going to do this. And they talked about it. They're not going to have that kind of stuff as a product on TNT. Like there's absolutely nothing they did at Fyter Fest that you will see on TV when they have their TV show. And they came right out and said it. Like Tony Khan in the media scrum after they're asked, is like, is this the stuff you're going to do on TNT? He's like, absolutely not. There's no way we're doing this on TV.
And that's more reassurance for TNT. Hey, don't worry. We know what we're doing. We know what we're going to get into. No problem. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was good. So I thought the pay-per-view was good. I just wished I was expecting something a little different. So I was a little surprised when I got what I got. But it was good. It was okay. Are we missing anything? Is there anything we haven't touched on? We talked about Raw and SmackDown. We talked about the Roman Reigns thing, the Seth Rollins apology, the PG era in WWE Fyter Fest. I think we're probably pretty good. Not much Wyatt this week, other than the little guys showing up on Raw and SmackDown, but even not as much this week as they were last week. So he did post something on social media today with some really weird, creepy picture of himself in the mask as the Fiend and stuff. So I think something's coming. Like I get the feeling if it isn't this week, it'll be next week. Like he's right around the corner, and that'll be really cool because I'm still excited to see that, even though they didn't refer to him very much this week.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. No photos like you said, so that's interesting. But
that's 2 weeks now they haven't had the segment, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've just done the puppets, so I think we talked about it and we asked how they're going to transition out of it. Well, I think we're seeing it, right? Like there's no videos anymore. The puppets are showing up. Eventually, it will lead to him showing up. Things will happen. It reminds me kind of the GTV. You remember GTV with the videos of people just being filmed backstage? And you're like, who is this? Yeah. Right? This is kind of that build-up, right? Like you're waiting and waiting and waiting for whoever GTV is. Now, that totally did not work out the way WWE wanted it to do, but they're building towards Bray Wyatt this way. So I think the videos may be over. Like I don't see them. There's just the feeling I'm getting, but it'll be good. We'll talk about it next week. We'll talk about Extreme Rules because that's a couple weeks away. It's not this weekend, but next weekend. So we have time to talk about that next week. But
make predictions and everything.
Yeah, we'll go through it there. I'm eager to see what Raw and SmackDown look like. How they're going to follow up Raw on Monday will be very interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Raw for sure. I'm very excited to see Raw next week. So first one for that in a while.
Cool. Well, let's leave it there. Let's remind everybody where they can hear us. Anchor.fm. The Sportster.com, Wrestling Write-Ups, our Twitter feed, our Facebook page. We're on a bunch of other platforms too, right?
Yeah, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, YouTube, Podbean.
Caught up on YouTube now. Yay.
Nice, we're caught up. You did it, man.
Yeah, so all the episodes are on YouTube now, so you can check them out there. Download it, subscribe to it, rate it, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear what you think. We're still growing, so the more you can tell us about the show, the better off we're going to do. And hopefully, I was really looking forward to being airing the Roman Reigns interview, but Brisk had some rules about us being able to use that stuff. So we should just talk about it. But I really would like to do more interviews with that and see what we can do about getting guests in the future. So we're going to work on some of that stuff. But man, thanks again for coming on this week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, it's good stuff.
All right, man. Thank you for another edition of Smart Marks Wrestling Podcast presented by thesportster.com. We will talk to you next week.